Hey, what's going on, everybody? Soaring to the Eagle's Nest with Will and Chris as we discuss our topic today, learning from your impulse. And I'll tell you one thing, it took us probably a good hour to come up with this title today. So I hope you guys enjoy the episode. Thank you guys all for the support as well. So let's dive right into it. Learning from your impulses. What is an impulse?
An impulse is basically your finite decision on the now and what you're doing in the present moment. Basically, an idea or a motion to move forward from this present moment. And impulses are going on within the conscious mind and the subconscious mind consistently on a constant basis.
Yes, I take that too. I'm going to read the actual definition from the dictionary. Just because,
teach me a little.
It's a sudden and strong, unreflective urge or desire to act, right? So when something bad happens at work, you're like, fuck it, I'm going to quit.
Yep.
Excuse my language. A dividing or motivational force, right? Impulses, okay? So we're discussing this today. We'll give you his theory about it. I take it as what our impulse is our subconscious. Our impulse is what we know and how we feel in a moment. And it's, I like the second definition more than the first one because the first one is so negative. But I always take impulse as what we want and what we think is right. I'm going to say it. Your senses is our impulse. You're going to feel a type of way. Anger is your impulse, but you're going to do something. You're going to act upon it. So the impulses that you get are just your senses on living, about being in the moment and in the now. So you feel them. There's a reason why they're happening. So, I believe it's that's God's signs on why it's happening and help you process it. And if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. But it doesn't mean that you have to act upon it right away.
Well, the impulse is the result of the action.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, the impulse is only complete once you act upon it.
Okay.
I think the impulse is really a feeling first. Just like you said, it's something that resonates within the senses itself. So it either comes in the form of a thought, a feeling, maybe even an emotion. You're really... The impulse itself is the initial idea. It's almost like, think of a ball of energy of light. When the sun goes out and it's done giving its light, it becomes a black hole. Mm-hmm. So that initial spark and the light and that resonating energy, I guess you could say, is what's really that impulse. And then you have your impulsive behaviors, which is your action that you come out of it with. And I think there's a huge struggle between understanding the impulse and which impulses are positive, which ones are negative, where should you go with your impulses, and should you even act on all of your impulses?
Oh, yeah, definitely, because it's about living in the moment and being in the present now. So, with your impulses, yes, it's your action of your feelings, of your subconscious, right? But in a workplace, if you need the money to provide for your family, if one thing goes wrong, you can't just quit your job because one thing went wrong. So it's about learning from that. I don't know if anybody's walked out of a job that listens, but I haven't. I don't believe in that. But when something goes wrong and you're just super busy and people just walk out on their job, I never understand how that happens. What do they learn from that? Nothing besides negative traits. So when we're discussing learning from your impulses, it's okay to be impulsive in sometimes, as you just said.
Right.
As a child who's growing up and learning, which I always like to break it down to, they only act on their impulses. They feel a certain way about a certain object or a certain thing, they're going to take it and they're going to put it in their mouth. Yep. And that's like their first impulse, everything in their mouth, right? I mean, as a father now, I'm seeing how my daughter is growing up, and she knows how to live her life. Like, it's crazy. But we, as parents, we guide them into the right direction. So impulses is, what our foundation, our subconscious. It's what we're going to learn from. So if you grew up in a family who acts upon every impulse, you're going to act upon every impulse. So let's learn from that and go forward.
It's like the concept of the child putting their hand on a hot burner. It burns its hand and learns. And the chances of a child touching that burner twice is slim to none.
Oh, yeah.
But there's also a context where you could take it into the account that there's certain things where we're touching the burner and we don't even realize it. So you do have a strong sense of impulse. We all do it. We all have impulses. And, relate to your discussion about people walking out on the job, that impulse to walk out presents you with two opportunities. Well, not even two, multiple. So the first thought is to walk out, right? And you can act on it. Or another impulse comes by and says, okay, I have a family, I have to keep working. Yep. And then you get another impulse, right? Whether it's then or later. Mm-hmm. Man, was I actually wrong? Did I do something wrong? Can I learn from this? And your impulses can actually give you a chance to reflect on things. So, when you don't act on that first impulse, you're giving yourself a chance to come up with another impulse, idea, a feeling,
and a educated impulse, more or less.
Right.
I mean, know the consequence before you act. Know the benefit before you act. An impulse, you could feel that it's right and you need to do it in a moment. And listen, if you act upon it, it could be great. And there could be great reward and benefit for just acting at the right moment and letting your impulse go through. Because listen, what we know is what we know.
Right.
You first off, I'm going to say, we got to cut the strings that brought us up. Because guess what? We could stand on our own now. As a person, and having a subconscious and having a conscious, we know what to do. We breathe, our heart beats without even knowing it. And I'm going to say, like, anything in life is like that. You do without even doing. It goes to the whole Wu way and the act of inaction, So your impulse is just an action of your inaction. I mean, it's how you're going to feel and how you're going to take that moment, because every moment is different. So regardless, it's going to happen. I'm going to relate this to a mother bird, right? A mother bird lays the chicks in a high nest. And when she feels is ready, she will push them out the nest to let them fly. And that is just the decision of life and the impulse, right? It's the action that she's doing to let her children fly and to become a self-suitable individual of itself.
That's the animal nature and impulse. That's the animals don't have the capability to understand the consequences of pushing those birds out of the nest. Or maybe the mother does understand, but the pushing out of the nest creates a ladder effect for another being to have that impulse, so that the baby bird is going to fly or it's going to die. And that is kind of how you need to structure your own life. In the morning, my alarm goes off, right? And I know that if I don't wake up as soon as my alarm goes off and I fall back asleep, I'm going to sleep for at least another hour. So my first impulse is to stand up I didn't have that impulsive thought until I trained myself to think that way.
And now it just happens.
Right, and I stand right up. That's the whole concept. My alarm goes off, stand up, get up. Because if I think about how comfortable I am and I think about these other impulses that the blanket feels good and I'm warm and I want to lay here, then guess what? I took a positive impulse to get up, listen to a negative impulse to lay down, and now I've lost time and I throw my whole day off, really.
But it goes to show as in what you were about to do, it just happens now. As in, you learn from that impulse to like, all right, there's two impulses that's about to happen right now, a positive and a negative, right? Because there's always, like I said, there's always a balance of it too. So when you learn from the impulse, it creates a routine, or it creates, it's the whole act or be acted upon we were discussing earlier before we started our podcast. And it goes to show when you wake up, you could either act and wake up or be acted upon, just go back to sleep and then ruin your day.
Absolutely, and that's technically living in the current moment. What do you want out of this?
So when to act on an impulse or when not to. This is the discussion, right? To learn from it or to not, because you will learn from it.
Well, you're a puppet. You're a puppet. If you just allow every impulse to take its course and dictate what you do with your life, are you really making any decisions for yourself? I mean, again, there's positive impulses, but then there's also strings you have to cut. And you're always adapting to what you're learning. So, okay, I've acted upon this impulse once. It didn't feel right. I didn't do good. I paid the consequences.
Yep.
What are the chances of you doing that again? The only chances of you doing it again is if you don't learn from the impulse.
Yep.
And sometimes you're not presented with the same situation twice, which, then you're not going to make the same mistake twice. But we can also apply what we learn from that situation or impulse and apply it to other areas of our life.
Oh, yeah.
Let me stand back and observe first and see what's going to happen next before I act.
Because I believe, too, that your impulse is what you actually want to do.
Right.
Like I said, it's that bridge between your subconscious and your conscious. So to act upon every impulse is just letting your subconscious ride out. And you could be okay with that. But there's going to be consequences, and there's going to be probably more consequences than benefits, because in the world that we live in today, that you need to follow a strict rule book and so on and so forth, because we have a constitution, we have laws, and we have all this. So to act upon an impulse, you flip me off, I want to shoot you in the face and I'm going to jail, but that's the impulse, and I could just let that ride. So it's about the bridge between the two, the subconscious and your conscious. Our conscious is more intelligent than our subconscious. That's because that's what we know up in our brain. So our subconscious is more or less how we feel about things, and just
Well, it's the animal nature within us.
Yeah.
It's that beast brain you have, because you have the stem of your brain, and then you also have your thinking brain. So, they say the stem of your brain is your beast brain, and that, I think, is where most impulses do come from. Is that initial thought and that initial path, like this is the way it's going to be, the fight or flight mentality, or the feel good mentality. I'm going to do this because it feels good. Those are all impulses. And, drinking when you wake up in the morning is an impulse that some people actually probably struggle with today. And they do. I know they do.
Yeah, and it breaks it down to your senses and how you feel.
Right.
Because if you feel a certain way about anything, if it feels bad, it's probably going to be bad.
Right.
So I'm going to say, pay attention to your senses, because, listen, I was unhappy at my last job, and, it was a great job, and I loved the workers, I loved the owners, but, I wasn't in it anymore. And I'm going to tell you one thing, it was the whole, I wasn't acting upon it. So to act or be acted upon, I was just letting it ride because I was comfortable, and I was, I was making some money, and so on and so forth. And my impulse was just like, no, you could stay. It was just telling me to stay. But guess what? I was like, I can't right now. And I kept grinding to find another job, and I found another job. And that was an impulse to find that other job because I was so unhappy. I was like, I gotta find another job. Especially on those days that I wasn't really, really happy. I was on, at work on Indeed, like applying for jobs just because that was my impulse. And it made me feel good in that moment. It made my senses come into play, and my emotions came, and I was, thinking about all of it. And if it was what made me happy in that moment is applying for all those jobs, but I knew the consequences. If the bosses found out, I could have lost my job. But guess what? I wasn't gonna be acted upon. I'm acting. I'm an actor in my illusion of life. And I'm not gonna let anything come into play with that. So if I just let my impulse and my comfortability ride out, I would be jobless right now.
You could have been.
No, I would have been.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the staffing, they don't have the money, they don't have all this stuff because of this whole pandemic.
Sure.
Which I have 2 kids to provide for. So this is why I say I acted upon it. I cut those strings onto what my subconscious was wanting me to do, and I just let my conscious ride out and I used my impulses more or less.
Well, you turned them into something positive.
I was mad one day, and I applied for my new job, and I got the new job.
Sure.
So that was an impulse, but it benefited me. I knew the consequences that could have came, but it still was going to benefit me in the long run.
Well, you were staying current with yourself. If you're unhappy in a current situation, which again, you're making that impulsive decision to stay neutral and stationary, you're actually doing more negative than you are positive. Yeah. You took the impulse to go look for a job, and it turned out to be something good, which you can narrow it down to remaining open-minded. Like, this isn't the moment I have to stay in for the rest of my life. This isn't the lifestyle that I have to commit to. You can have an open mind and reach out and use your impulses to discover other avenues and pathways in life. An impulse, again, is just an initial thought that you have, and what are you going to do with it?
Yeah. I mean, I love impulse because I believe that impulses is what just keeps us being us, as in that we're, like I said, the rule books and follow in line, fall in line, and this is what we learn, and we guided our children to not touch the burner.
Yeah.
But guess what? Our impulses are going to take over regardless. So it's about learning from them. Let your impulses flow, but do it in the right way.
Well, yeah, you're honestly presenting yourself with an opportunity to learn. You're taking that impulse and allowing the decision you make to take its course, and then you either pay the consequences or you benefit from the consequences.
So go on.
There's multiple situations and outcomes that come from an impulse, and it's up to you to have that prior knowledge and wisdom to either decide I'm gonna ride this out and keep on going, or I need to back off a little bit and disregard. Because when you do disregard an impulse, you're presented with another opportunity. So listen to this quote. This was from Marcus Aurelius. I know I talk about him a lot on the podcast. I'm at heart a Stoic. I do have a little more of a pessimistic view on things, as we've discussed before, and it's not pessimism into where I take it into a negative context. I just like to understand different views of life. And here's what he says. If anyone can prove and show to me that I think and act in error, I will gladly change it. For I seek the truth by which no one has ever been harmed. The one who is harmed is the one who abides in deceit and ignorance. So, take into account, we're talking about impulses. I can keep on acting upon that impulse, and then you pay the consequences. I'm being harmed here now, right? And that's because of my ignorance of understanding the consequence of the impulse. It's like, I hear it from people a lot. People who go to prison and county jail, they go out and commit petty crime because they want a bed, a cot, and food, And you have these people that are paying the consequences to their crime without truly understanding the impact they're having on their own life. So you're literally halting the growth of your own character because you want a bed, food, and water. When on the flip side, there's people that go to county or prison once and learn from that.
Oh, yeah.
I was just stripped of all of my rights. I'm being told what to do 24/7, and that's it. Now, that's someone who is seeking the truth. That I have the power over myself to not keep on continuing to ride out these impulses.
Yeah. So I could break it down to your urges.
Sure.
Because your urges is definitely what's gonna help your impulse.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, more or less urges is gonna help your impulse in a negative way because if you're addicted to anything, you get the urge for it.
Right.
You get the, you need to do it. And that's your impulse. Like, all right, I'm gonna make it happen. All right, it's gonna happen right now.
Well,
Just
but
like
then
earlier.
there's where the impulse comes in that, hey, I have rent to pay. I have bills to pay. I have a family to take care of. Those are all impulses too.
Yes.
And where on your moral compass do these things lay? Because your moral standards tie closely into your impulses.
Well, about using your impulse and then sending it through the mind of critical thinking.
Right.
Because yes, I could have walked out on the job that didn't treat me well. But guess what? I knew I had a family and I knew I had to do it the right way. And I still let my impulse ride. I just did it in the correct way.
Well, you took back and stuck you stuck yourself in almost like an observatory where, okay, I'm going to watch this for a minute. And I bet you went to work and realized one day that I thought I was doing the right thing, but I'm waking up angry. I thought I was doing the right thing, but on the ride to work, I'm not happy.
Yeah, I mean, to that, and I was getting hurt more.
Right.
And I was like, and this is why I always say trust your senses and like the energy around you as well, because I was hurting myself more without even knowing it. I was making careless mistakes. I was getting cut 2 times as more than I wouldn't. I never really cut myself until the end where I was unhappy. And then it was like, cut on my finger every freaking day. And I was just like, why? And I realized that this is why. Is because I'm stuck here.
Well, you keep telling yourself it's okay. I'm good.
And it's
okay.
not. And it's not.
Right.
Because it wasn't in my plan to be there anymore. It wasn't in God's plan or the fate of the universe for me to be there anymore. And these were signs given to me by my God telling me to get out. And guess what? This is what I'm saying. Get out, or you would have been jobless and struggling and hurting and so on and so forth. Because this is the whole thing. You're going to get senses and you're going to get, and this is the whole bridge, between your subconscious and your conscious. You're going to feel it inside. And if it doesn't feel right or if it feels good, it is good. And it is bad because that's how you are and that's how you're going to take it.
Absolutely. Of course. And what you do with that is build you're taking the time for yourself to build a healthy relationship with yourself. So if you can understand your impulses in the context of a negative impulse and a positive impulse, you can put that divide. So we discussed the yin and yang a lot, which I think we should eventually just post a huge one on the wall behind me because it's always a topic of discussion. But they're with your negative impulses. So not everything could be good and not everything could be bad.
Because you can't have one without the other.
Right. And the thing is there are certain impulses that are to the extreme of negativity. Touching on, you were talking about addiction before. that is such a negative impulse that it'll consume anything positive in your life.
Contrary. If we're talking about addictions and we're talking about drugs, there is always a benefit from doing a drug. Okay?
To an extent.
To an extent. No doubt in my mind. But there's always at least a benefit. You're going to feel good in a moment's time. And that's the benefit of it. But there's so many negative benefits that the balance of it is negative.
There is no balance. There is. It basically will eventually consume your entire life.
Well, not necessarily. As in you could, you could use what you consider a drug, as in like caffeine, right? It's considered a drug. Sure. But there are beneficial things that happen with your body with drinking a cup of coffee.
Well, that's in moderation.
But when you take that, well, that's what I was going.
Yeah.
So no matter what, this addiction is okay in moderation.
Right.
You could be addicted to meditation, but only in moderation.
Well, yeah, listen, if you're doing it all day long, what are you really doing with the other outlets of your life? I mean, there's only so much you can get out of sitting in a meditative state. Just like our discussions, we can discuss something for an hour, but what if we dragged it out for 2 hours? I mean, you wouldn't, after that first hour, you're not going to absorb anything else from it. It just becomes stagnant and stale. Which ties into impulses. And if you're continuously choosing the same impulse over and over again, then you end up in a stagnant place in life.
Yeah.
So you just stop all growth and basically limit yourself to the limits that you can be reaching for, instead of realizing that there's more to life than just this one single thing.
Oh, yeah. And about observing more to life is like letting the impulses ride out, because you're going to realize there is more to life with following your impulses. There's going to be more positive experiences coming forward if you let your impulses ride out, but do it in a critical thinking type of way.
Well, look at some of the people that have made things for themselves. So you have people such as Gary Vee, or Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, just as a few examples. Some of these guys went out on a limb, and said, "Hey, listen, I'm going for this. That's it. I'm gonna fail, or I'm gonna be the greatest success in history." And that's an impulse.
But most of them went in with the objective that they're going to fail, because I feel like it's better to have that knowledge like this, and this might not work. But guess what? I'm going to do it anyways because this is what I feel is necessary.
That's where the impulse comes in. That I am putting my life on the line here by giving it my all. And that's the impulse. Let me give myself to this cause and let's see what happens. Let's be a risk taker today and do it right. And those are the impulses that you can look at in a positive manner that might change your life forever. Just like me getting in the car to come and record our podcast, that's an impulse because I'm putting my time and life on the line to come and have a healthy discussion with a good friend that could potentially even be revolutionary in the moment that I'm sitting here doing it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it's just, you know, and then in that entire process of choosing which impulses to ride out with and disregard, you're gaining knowledge, you're gaining wisdom, you're painting an entire picture for yourself. And then it's a picture you can hang up on the wall. We talk about credibility sometimes. And you know, by acting upon your impulses and doing things that are to the contrary, either considered as normal or
it could not even be normal, but
that's what I'm saying. Is just you're you know, when you're acting on your impulses, you're really just
it's what you could be
yourself.
Here for.
Yeah.
As in, if you're trying to find a purpose to life, I mean, follow your impulse.
Sure.
Because this is where it all came down. This is what we forgot as adults. We forget to follow our impulses because we are trained to realize that if you don't follow the line, there is consequences.
Well,
so it's about playing the spectrum of the line. How, all right, I'm not going to move this line, but I'm going to try to bend it as how many times you snap a rubber band on yourself. I'm going to bend it and see how far I could stretch it without it snapping. And I'm going to stay in this line. And guess what? I'm going to continue to do it every
Well, it
time.
loses its elasticity after a
Well, it
while.
actually
if we're
gains
talking-
more.
Yeah.
It gains more. It's tight, 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 and then it becomes looser and looser and looser, and then now this circle rubber band is now a straight line, and now you can move it anywhere you want.
Absolutely.
Because now it's yours. Because your impulse is what made it become a new line or whatever you want to consider it.
Absolutely.
The circle now became straight or whatever. The two ends that connected it are now endless because what you thought is now unknowing because we've used our impulse, what we are here for and what we are known for as our subconscious and in life that's what we have is the connection to our conscious, but then it's unknowing because when you think you know something, someone else is going to come in and contradict it.
Well, in the world of philosophy, they say if you know everything, you're a terrible philosopher.
Oh yeah.
And the more you discover the idea of philosophy in itself, you begin to realize that you don't know anything. And that's where the impulsive part comes in.
That's why I love philosophy.
Absolutely, because it presents you with an opportunity to question things that otherwise would never be questioned, which is, just a very narrow one that everybody will understand is why are we here? Or what happens when you die? Or what are we living this life for? Those are very broad philosophical questions, but the idea is that there is no right or wrong answer on that pathway until you've discovered the answers. But then once you have an answer, there's more. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like looking down a hallway that's never ending. You're just kind of...
It's going to be questions to ask.
Right, exactly.
But it's about what you're going to feel that it's right. It's like our last podcast. It's what's going to work for you.
Right.
And if you want it, you could have it. And that's the impulse that's going to keep you going forward.
Yep.
If you want it, it's right in front of you. Let's just grab it. Let your impulse take action. Don't worry about anything else but your goal. Like if you're gonna do it, you gotta go all the way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that doesn't mean to harm anybody in your process, but if you have to cut ties with people or you have to remove things from your life or even go out on a limb and cut contacts with everybody. There's people that, famous actors who said I had to cut ties with my entire family and just go move to LA and let's see what happens.
Yeah. And that was their impulse that made them in that successful moment. I mean, because like I said, if you're going to act upon an impulse, you have to act all the way.
Yeah.
You have to go all the way. Know the consequences, know the benefits, but then follow through. I mean, we've talked about that. Like, if you're going to start anything, you better finish it.
Well, yeah, and do your research before you even start.
Oh, yeah.
Try and understand what you're really getting yourself into before you even decide to act upon anything.
And if you're in a struggling position and you want to make your life better, just know that this journey is going to go downhill before it goes up.
Absolutely.
So know what you're getting yourself into. And see how it could benefit you. And see if it's worth it. Because was it worth for me to walk out on my job? Definitely not.
No.
But that was the impulse I was feeling.
That didn't mean to go not look for another job, though.
Exactly. So it's about doing it in the right way. As I'm talking about critical thinking this week, impulses go through that critical thinking process on any impulse that I ride through.
Right.
I'm feeling a type of way. Should I do it? Maybe not. All right, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, here, put it by the wayside and let's not go there.
But don't overthink it, because when you overthink it, it's...
Well, you can develop regret.
Yeah.
And things such as that. So that's a sticky subject to even really dive into, to be honest with you.
I mean, as regret, I don't have any regret, As in from my impulses, like, do I regret anything that I've done impulsively? Hell no. Because guess what? It's what made me here, and it's what brought me to this moment in life right now. Simple as that. And it's got, guess what? It made me stronger. It might have, in society and what other people see, which this is what I don't like. This is why what we were discussing on our Sunday motivational recap of, or maybe before it, about the illusion of life and your impulse. Your illusion of life is what you see life as, and everybody has their own illusion of it. So you're going to act a certain way because it's what you want to vision. It's what you see, and that's what you want to create. It's what you manifest, and manifestation is an impulse to anything that you put your thoughts to.
To a certain degree, and I agree with some of what you said, but you also have to look at the outer world in itself as well. So, you can't take what you're saying into a sense of being selfish, but there is a part where you do have to act on your impulses, but also stand down when it's going to do harm to others. I just think it's a very, very tough topic to discuss because...
Oh, yeah. I mean, sometimes I got the villain man, the mindset.
Yeah,
the villain
exactly.
mindset that I will kill half the planet in order to save humanity. You know what
Right.
I mean? But type,
Right.
It is what it is. That's an impulse, I mean, if like Thanos.
Right.
One snap, half the population gone. And that was his impulse because he felt like it was right, and he did anything to make it happen. This dude, this is fictional, right?
Right.
This dude grabbed all the Infinity Stones, beat the Avengers like 3 times, and he continued to do what he felt is necessary. And he went all the way in doing it. And still, the Avengers came and got him down. Because guess what? No matter what, he still acted upon his impulse, but was it right? No. So that's where the consequence came in, and he died. He
paid the consequences for his impulses.
Exactly.
That's it. Absolutely.
But it's awesome, It's just sometimes it is, But that's why I do that critical thinking process.
It's the most important part of the process.
Oh yeah, because with life and living in a world of 2020 mindsets.
Well, let's see. You got to take into account where we stand as a society.
Exactly, as a society and our pack. I always like to bring it down to our pack. And what does our pack want? What does our pack see? How are we surviving in this time? What impulse is going to help our pack? Or are we going to get casted away?
Right.
Which, yeah, I could live a lone wolf, but do I want to?
What's the point?
To be
for
free.
Some people, it works.
Be free, isolation is a gift in some people.
Yeah.
I don't like being isolated because my thoughts consume me way too much, and that's what's good about other human beings. It's that debate on it. It's why we get together.
Right.
And, it was an impulse that I've always had to become a speaker, and I just never acted upon it because it's what the world told me couldn't happen.
Right.
But listen, I continued to do me, and now we're here in the Eagle's Nest, and we're rocking out with podcast episode whatever.
We're coming here every week to have discussions, and let alone putting videos out there for people to enjoy. And the thing is that we're actually getting positive feedback.
Yeah. So it was about knowing the consequences and the benefit.
The only consequence to what we're doing here is failure, and for it to not work.
What is failure?
Exactly.
Then, because I'm not failing, and if I'm doing
right,
no matter what, it's just, it might. If I'm running a marathon, it just might take me longer.
Yeah, I'll get there.
I'll get there, but I'll be crawling getting there. I might have to stop for a moment, but I'm still gonna finish.
Right.
You might have to take a break. You might have to take a rest. But don't let it affect your decisions going forward either. It's the same thing with an impulse. You might have to subside that impulse at one moment, but don't throw it away.
No.
Because you felt that way for a reason. So learn from that and go forward from that. You learned it because it made you unhappy. So how are we going to make it better? What are we going to do differently to make it better? Or to make this impulse not happen again?
Part of the process is struggle. You have to fight for the things that you want.
You wouldn't know struggle without ever gain before.
Right.
And you won't know gain without ever struggling before.
Absolutely. And you would never appreciate it.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, it's a great conversation. It's a great thing, our impulses. But it's about going through that critical thinking process. I mean, if you want to live in a world of today, in today's society, because if you just want to go nomad, man, do it, please.
By all means, absolutely.
I've known several people who just they just needed to hike the Appalachian Trail, or to just go off in the woods for a week, man. Self-isolation,
yeah.
Because if you can't act upon your impulse, I guess what? Go in the woods and go act upon your impulses, because guess what? You'll see life as it should be. You'll see life as you wanted to see it, as your illusion wants you to see it. And that's the whole thing as the illusions. As in, everybody's life's different. Everybody wants a different life. So go live the life that you want. If you can't follow the rule book that we have in today's society, go nomad.
You'll have to pay the consequences of your decisions.
Yeah, you won't have, your family or people won't back you. I mean, it doesn't matter. Regardless, just go do you. And don't let anybody else
affect it. If you don't like it, you can come back. I mean, it's
yeah.
not like you can't reconnect, so...
You might have to pay some taxes or something, but when it comes down to it...
IRS will be the first ones at your door.
My impulse is to not pay the taxes, but I know the consequence of it.
You gotta pay taxes.
I gotta pay them. Otherwise, I'm gonna affect my family. And I'm going to affect more than that. It's always that critical thinking process of the impulse. Like, I don't want to give the government my money. But we do it, and I got over it, and I live a happy life with it. So don't sit and dwell upon what you can't change either. Unless you're going to act upon that impulse and try to make it change.
We got to be willing.
And become a congressman, a town selectman, and go through the process and do the work and go all the way, and don't just sit down and dwell on it.
Right.
So
that was a good discussion, and definitely mind stimulating. It's even gotten me reflecting. That's why I'm sitting here not saying much, because I'm reflecting on the decisions I make on a daily basis. What can you do to better yourself each and every day so you could bring the best version of yourself to the world?
I mean, that's what Tangible Triumph's about, right? That bridge between self-discovery and reality, and that's what we're here to do, and that's what we're trying to just put it out there.
Absolutely.
Because guess what? You listen or you don't. You gain or you don't, and that's perfectly fine with us. So on that, I hope everybody has a great week. I mean, thank you for tuning in on our Wednesday podcast, and stay tuned for more episodes coming your way.
Yeah, absolutely. All rivers lead to the same ocean. Just don't swim upstream.
Peace out.
Peace.